Hey, everybody, welcome to another edition of TryKnoxville.com. I'm Mike Roberts along for the ride again, broadcasting from the National Sprint Car Hall of Fame and Museum. And our guest today is Knoxville Superintendent of Schools, Cassi Pearson. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for
Good.
having me on, Mike.
That's
This
a
is a
mouthful
pleasure.
when we have to introduce your title. You realize that, don't you?
It's long to spell, too.
We need to abbreviate that or something. I don't know how we're going to do this, but thanks for taking the time out to come out in the middle of the day. Again, we're broadcasting live from the National Sprint Car Hall of Fame and Museum, and I want to remind everybody. I think the superintendent needs this car: 2021 Corvette Z51 Stingray. Enter your chance to win at winaz51corvette.com. Of course, proceeds go to the National Sprint Car Hall of Fame Museum, and that will be drawn this year on Saturday night of Nationals. I just like being able to promote the Nationals because last year we couldn't promote the Nationals. So everything's changed on us. But the reason we have you on here is you've been around for a few years now, but I don't know as I've even answered or got the answers rather to some of these questions about how you started out. So let's go back in what we call the Wayback Machine. Not that far back for you, but you know what I'm saying. Where were you born? Where were you raised?
I was born and raised in Nevada, Iowa,
Just down the road.
just down the road. And I think it could be a sister city to Knoxville because the demographics and just the feel of the community are almost identical. And I think that's one of the things I love the most about it. When I first came to Knoxville, it felt like home. You know, there's so many similarities with Nevada and my upbringing and the people that I was around in Nevada versus the people here in Knoxville. It truly felt like coming home, and it's nice that it's only an hour away, and I still have family back there and get to visit quite frequently. And yeah, it's been a good ride so far.
Let's talk about family. Siblings growing up?
Yes, I have 2 sisters and 2 brothers,
Holy cow.
so there's 4 of us.
Almost the Brady Bunch.
Almost.
Yeah.
I have a twin sister.
Where are you? Where are you? Oh, you got twin then. I didn't know that.
Yes.
See, I learned something.
You did.
The show's over with. That's all I needed to know. So, no. Okay, so you got twin sister.
I have a
Where's the
twin
rest?
sister. Yep. So my twin sister and I are the oldest.
Okay.
My mom thought it was so great having twins. She wanted to try to duplicate that. So my younger brother and younger sister are just about 10 months apart.
Okay.
And then I have a second brother who actually joined our family later in life. He was an exchange student from Venezuela when I was in college.
Okay.
And Roger just felt right into the family, and pretty much he's one of us, and we refer to him as our brother, and he actually lives in State Center now.
Okay.
And all of my siblings are married with families of their own. 2 of them are in State Center. One is in Colorado, and one is in Florida.
Isn't it amazing? You talk about exchange students. Isn't it amazing how someone from halfway across the world can fit in so normal, like they were born and raised here? I mean, you always think of foreign countries as being completely different than what we are, but there's not that much difference.
No, and
You know.
I was so impressed. AFS was the company that we went through, and they did a phenomenal job of matching,
Yeah.
the student and the family. And it was interesting because when Roger first came, grew up with a single mom, a younger brother, didn't have a lot of money or opportunities at that time, and very hard worker though, which is one of the reasons he fit into our family so well. Growing up, work ethic, I think I was taught when I was probably a year and a half or 2 years old. It was just kind of in our DNA. And so when he came, and he was a hard worker and happy, just optimistic, positive person, made the most of everything. He loved the opportunities he was provided here in the United States because
Sure.
he didn't have those in Venezuela. And then just truly became part of our family the year he lived with us. Went back to Venezuela and finished his degree down there and got married. And when the civil unrest really became a huge concern,
Sure.
he and his wife and kids actually were able to relocate back to the United States because they have international businesses that they own now.
Okay.
And so it's been a blessing for us to have him so close. And some of his family is still there, so we still say a lot of prayers that things get better. And when you know some details of what other countries are going through, man, it sure makes you appreciate what we have back here. His kids, when they were young, couldn't go out of the apartment because there would be people walking down the streets with machine guns.
Wow.
And if you were a boy of a certain age, 10, 12 years old, there would be vans that would just pick them up and
Instant draft.
An instant draft, and
Wow.
families didn't know where those kids were going to. And then not having food on the shelves, not having electricity for most of your day. You might get electricity for 2 or 3 hours a day, and then it goes off again. So the things that they lived through and that we have heard about just really make you sit back and say, oh, I have a wonderful house, the house that I get to live in, and
Sure.
the food that we have on the table, and the sports that we get to play, and the entertainment that we get to enjoy here. And we don't really have to ask permission. We don't have to worry about our safety or military coup. And we're pretty lucky to live where we live.
You ever have any of your kids or a kid in general say, "Oh, worst day ever"? You always think, "Okay, really? Go check that place out and tell me how bad it is." So
Exactly.
yeah, it can always be worse. That's why I always try to insinuate on this thing. Mom and Dad, what did they do for a living growing up?
Yeah, so my mom and dad had their own business when I was really young.
Okay.
They had a well repair business. So back before rural water, people had their own wells. We would go when things were frozen up and tried to get kettle waters unfrozen for the winter. I remember many Christmas days that we were out working with Dad. After, I think he did that for about 10 years and then sold that business to one of the guys that he worked with and created an excavation company.
Okay.
And so then we got into septic tanks. And so growing up, we all got to work with my dad.
Dad liked to be in the dirt, didn't he?
He loved being in the dirt. He actually went to school to be a conservationist.
Okay.
And so loves nature, did a lot of camping and a lot of outdoor fishing, that type of stuff. Was not a hunter, though, which I find interesting. But we always wanted to go to work with Dad when he was putting in a new septic
Sure,
system.
you didn't want to repair.
And we did a lot of repairs, and those are usually the ones he wanted us to go along with.
Yeah,
You had your hip waders boots that you put on, and if you were lucky, you could go find salamanders or try to find a distraction and not have to do too much of the really stinky work.
Right.
But did that until he got ready for retirement, and we also then had a hog farm. So
I can relate to that.
we had a small barn with about 50 head of hogs, and I've been involved with everything from giving the shots, clipping teeth and tails, and castrating, and all of that good stuff. And then we would sell them off and took them to 4-H fair, a few of them.
So you raised the fat hogs in?
So we raised fat
Okay,
hogs, yep,
yep.
and also had chickens and dogs and wild cats. We never got to name the cats because we didn't know how long they'd be around.
Yeah.
But no, lived about a mile outside of Nevada, so we would get on our bike and ride Highway 30 into town and go to the swimming pool. But it was, I enjoyed my childhood, and we did work a lot as, farm kids.
Sure.
Do you?
You had to. When you say farm kid, you had to work. There was no choice.
Yes, I remember, and a lot of our friends were in the same boat, so we thought it was just normal. We would get up at 5:30 and do chores in the morning, and then you'd go wash your hair in either tomato juice or vinegar to try to get the hog smell out of it. I'm sure it still smelled by the time we got on the bus, but that was just part of our daily routine. And after school, you'd go feed hogs again and get chicken eggs, and that was just what we did.
Way back when I was a teenager, I want to say it was junior high-ish. Maybe I'm wrong on this date a little bit, but the movie 9 to 5 came out. Dolly Parton never and didn't go see it. We didn't have time to go to movies. You chored. That was it. But I remember hearing the TV commercials or watching TV commercials or hearing it, and the 9 to 5. I'm sitting there going, what's a 9 to 5? As a farm kid, there's no such thing as a 9 to 5. As a farmer in general, there's no such thing as 9 to 5.
It was 5 to 9.
Yeah, exactly. It was 5 in the morning till 9 at night. If you were
Yes.
lucky, you got things done by then. So what was it like being the elder sibling? I mean, you had a twin to blame on a little bit, but I was the older brother of just, I only had one sister, but I always went with that. She's spoiled. I'm working. What's up with that? Was that animosity going on in your family, or did everybody get the shovel, if you will?
Ooh, we had our sibling rivalries and
Sure.
our little fights, but for the most part, I would say we got along. My twin sister is amazing,
Okay.
and
Identical twins or not?
we are not identical.
Okay, that's a blessing right there.
Yes, I would say
For the
not-
parents anyway.
Yes, not identical. I would say I was a whole lot more independent
Okay.
and loved to read kind of more in my thoughts and Chris is very much a people person, was a very, in our family, was the peacekeeper. She never wanted anybody to be unhappy. And so if my younger sister and I were fighting about something, she would go back and forth until everybody was happy. And Chris and I, actually, my twin, it was interesting. We both went to college for education.
Okay.
And our first jobs both happened to be in second grade. Our second year, the schools that we were in across the state moved us to third grade. And then the next year, we got moved back to second grade.
I gotta say, you're hooked up,
And so we were very similar paths. And then she went into guidance counseling. So she was an elementary guidance counselor. And today, she is the elementary principal at Nevada Elementary.
She's back home.
So she is back home.
That's cool. Full circle for her.
Yes.
Sports or anything growing up?
Yes, attempted.
Attempted?
So when I was in sixth grade on New Year's Day, we decided to take a family trip to the local golf course and go tobogganing.
Okay.
And, Dad was ready to go and load everybody up in the station wagon, and we convinced him one more trip down the hill. And that trip tended to not work out so well for me. We had made a great jump at the bottom of the hill and hit that thing perfectly, and I ended up with 3 compression fractures in my neck.
Yow.
So after 4 months of being in a back brace and not getting to do a whole lot, I also never grew. So from that point on, I have been 5'0".
That's. I was gonna say DNA. My mom never made 5 foot.
Okay, my grandma's only 4'11".
Okay, so it's a little bit of DNA
there.
there.
Is a little DNA too.
Yeah.
My twin sister is 5'4", though.
The injury sounds so much more impressive though when you're talking about height, though, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a
come
better
on.
story.
Yeah.
Better story. So
The jump was perfect. The landing, not so much.
not so much.
Okay.
And I knew instantly. So they laid me out on the toboggan and took me in. And it was an eventful 6th grade year.
I'll bet.
In 7th grade, seventh grade, it was the very first year that Iowa had volleyball for junior high girls. So tried that, tried basketball, and ended up then, had also played softball since I was in about 3rd or 4th grade.
Sure.
So played softball all the way through, but decided I was probably a better cheerleader and dance team and color guard. So I ended up getting more into those activities and football cheerleader and a wrestling cheerleader, part of the band, marching band, color guard, swing choir and choir. Loved to sing, did some solo stuff at church and outside of that. Also did Girl Scouts when I was younger and 4-H. Typical Iowa kid that, back in the late 80s and early 90s, you kind of do everything because it's available to us, and really enjoyed it.
Where'd you go to college at?
So I started at Iowa State University, went there for 2 years, and then decided to follow a boyfriend to the University of Iowa.
Okay.
So I got my degree from.
Did mom and dad speak to you after that? Because Nevada name's right there.
And that was part of the reason for going to Iowa State. It was 9 miles away.
Exactly.
It was really nice. It was great because actually my folks are Hawkeye fans, so they actually did not mind.
They're in the wrong neighborhood.
They were. Became a Hawkeye and loved my time in Iowa City. And now we have one of our sons is a freshman at the University of Iowa.
Sure.
So it's been fun to go back and move him in and drive around town a little bit and see all of the changes. But graduated from University of Iowa, and for about a year and a half then I was the director of a tutoring company there in Iowa City.
Okay.
And decided I liked that, but I really wanted to teach.
What was the major? When you went to Iowa, were you planning on being a teacher?
Yes,
Okay.
Elementary education is what my major was. And so went ahead and looked for a job then teaching and got my start at Dyke Elementary. So
Where was that at?
It's up by Cedar Falls.
See, I never have heard of that. I've been up Cedar Falls, but never have been up there.
Have you heard of Dyke, New Hartford?
I have. That area right there then. Okay.
So,
Okay.
Dyke is 2 little towns combined.
Sure.
Dyke Elementary taught 2nd grade. In Grundy County.
Mm-hmm.
Also in Grundy County is Wellsburg. And that is actually where I was living and then driving back and forth. And they had an opening there for 8th grade language arts. So I became an 8th grade language arts teacher and coached middle school softball.
Okay.
I did that for actually 10 years, enjoyed that. And during the first year I started in Wellsburg, they consolidated, and the school is now AGWSR. So if you've heard of one of the alphabet schools up north.
MOUSE.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So I taught for them from 2000 to 2010, and during that time also became their curriculum director. And the last year had a principal retire, and so they also made me the middle school principal, trying to save a little bit of money and going through some of the 2007, 2008 is when we had the 10% across the board cuts for schools.
Right.
Still coaching at that point in time, and
Short of driving the bus, you pretty well did it all up there.
that's kind of how it felt, yes.
Yeah.
And I loved every minute of it. Got recruited away, though. So also in Grundy County is Grundy Center.
Okay.
And so that was my third stopping point in my career. And so they recruited me to for a succession plan for their superintendent. John knew he wanted to retire in 2 years, and they wanted someone to come in, work alongside him, learn things, and then become the superintendent when he retired. And so the first 2 years as I did that, I was also a morning kindergarten teacher, the afternoon middle school principal, and mentoring to become the superintendent. So for 2 years, I got a kick, and this is the absolute truth, but I'd be able to say the same thing morning and afternoon. Keep your hands to yourself and be nice. And it didn't matter if they were 5 or if they were 14, keep your hands to yourself and be nice.
Yeah.
It was really a great opportunity for me to be able in a single day to compare how similar kids are.
What year are we talking? I mean, basically it was basic training to become a superintendent while you were doing everything else around it. What year are we talking about there?
Yeah, so that would have been
Or years, I should say.
2010.
Yeah.
So I did 2010. So I've been a superintendent now for 10 years.
Was it your intentions to go that high up
Nice.
in the food chain for education?
Um,
I mean, that's a big step from elementary teacher graduate to I'm running the community on as far as the schools are concerned.
yes, when I first started teaching, I thought I'd be a teacher for life.
Sure.
And it was fun because the gal, my very, very first job, the gal I took over for, Annette Erpelding, was retiring after 42 years.
Yeah.
So she had been 42 years in the same classroom with the same grade level.
Oh, Lord.
And needless to say, I had some cleaning house to do because
Right.
she left all of her file cabinets full, and I found things that were from the 1950s.
Right.
So that was, I just kind of figured, well, I'm taking over for her, and I'll do the same thing.
Yeah.
And I had a great mentor, though. Barb Moyne was my first principal,
Okay.
and she must have saw something in me that really got me involved with some of the leadership training things. And then when I went to Wellsburg, kind of the same situation, Sherry Caldwell kind of took me under her wing and got me into the curriculum side because I'd never really thought I would do that either. And then kind of pushed me into, well, you could take on the principal job. This isn't,
Right.
you can do this, no big deal. And then as I was finishing up with my principalship, they started recruiting me into the superintendent work. And, I was going to Iowa State. I had been in college, it seemed like forever, just taking classes along with teaching full time. And at that time, I had 2 little boys, married, and we lived on an acreage. And life was busy, but that's all I ever knew.
Right.
And so one of my professors at Iowa State basically said, you only have like 4 classes left and you'll have your superintendent license. Why don't you just keep going?
Nice.
So I did.
Yeah.
And I love the variety of the job. And I think that is one of the things when I was teaching and I felt like I had kind of hit the point where I'd done everything I knew how to do and I was getting the results I was hoping to get with our student achievement and just some of the fun things we did with our softball team and other things. It just kind of felt like the right time to find a new challenge. And administration is definitely a challenge. Every day is different.
That's what I was going to ask you because you literally go from, let's use it from the parental aspect of it. You go from dealing with mom and dad maybe once a quarter, sometimes twice during a quarter, to now as administration superintendent, mom and dad's a phone call away every day. The community's a phone call away every day. Media's a phone call away every day. And it's nonstop. I mean, it's not just like they call once in a while. It's an everyday occurrence. You're dealing with the entire community then, rather than just the 20 or 25 kids you had in that class.
And it's a little different, and people might be a little surprised. And this is something I think over the last 10 years, I've tried to figure a way to balance, if you will. It seems that, especially in today's world with technology, people don't necessarily go to the source to get the information. And so I hear from far fewer people than you might anticipate.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I get more of my information just scrolling through Facebook.
Everybody relies on Facebook, don't they?
They do,
Yeah.
instead of just calling and asking, what's up or what's the truth.
Sure.
And so it makes it a little more of a struggle because I'm a pretty open book. If you want to have a conversation, I'm happy to have a conversation, whether it's on the phone, in person, email. I am good with facts. If I can just put out facts over email, I'm
Right.
perfectly happy to do that, or a text message. But if there is anything that needs to have that, you need to be able to see people's body language or know exactly what they're thinking, see if they're confused about it or if they're upset about it. I'd much prefer to hear a voice or be able to see someone's face. And so every once in a while we do have meetings, and I'll just invite people and we'll reach out. If we've seen things on Facebook, we'll reach out to people and say, I understand maybe you weren't very happy about this decision, or maybe you don't have the information that would be helpful to you. Would you like to come in and visit?
Right.
And I've been really pleased because almost everybody we've done that with has been willing to come in and
Sure.
have that conversation. And sometimes they end up being great advocates for us too when they know the whole story.
Right. How'd you end up in Knoxville? Let's talk about that.
So Knoxville.
Yeah.
I was the superintendent up in Grundy Center, and
Right.
I'd kind of climbed the ranks there.
The climate change wasn't that big a difference. I know we're further south, but it wasn't. You didn't come here for warmth. I'll put it that way.
I did not. I did not. It was interesting because I was recruited to
Okay.
come here. And so when the search firm reached out and asked if I would have any interest, it got me thinking. I really hadn't thought much about moving until pretty recent in that time frame. This was in 2013.
Okay.
So in the fall of 2013, we had school board elections, and that was the beginning of when they started to change the pattern. And when I very, very first started, elections were every year, and you would just turn over a third of your school board.
Sure.
And so then you'd bring on one or two new people, you could get them acclimated, and life just kind of rolled. And I think most businesses, when they're doing boards of directors, that's pretty common
Right.
from a business standpoint. In the state of Iowa, for some reason, thought that school board elections now should go every other year. And so at least every other election, you turn over a super majority. So you have the majority coming in that's brand new, that doesn't know anything, because there's no requirements except for residents,
Right.
to be on the school board. And so I ended up having 4 brand new folks on my school board and only 1 veteran, and became more of a challenge than what I had anticipated.
Right.
And they really wanted to go a direction that I wasn't real comfortable with. So it made it pretty easy when the recruiter called and said, "Hey, I've got this job opening, and I really think you should consider it. I think you'd be a nice fit for it. I think you're what they're looking for."
Right.
It was easy to say, "Yeah, show me what it is." And so that was, I got my initial call for recruiting in December.
Okay.
Came up in January and interviewed, and my mom actually came with me, and she did kind of the tour around town. And I told her on our way back up home that it felt right. You just, after you have met people, and it was a long day of interviewing, it was a full day, a lot of different groups of people, and it just felt like home. It felt good. People were easy to talk to. And when we were talking about vision and what people wanted for this community and for our school district, all the things that I have a passion for, or kind of lie on my heart. And so it was really easy then. I happened to be sitting, I think that was on a Wednesday. They still had another interview on Thursday and one on Friday. And Friday night, I'm sitting in a basketball game in a gym full of people, and my phone rings. And so I pick it up and said, "Hold on a minute, let me get to a place, that's quiet."
Right.
And got the offer and accepted immediately.
Sure.
Everything just fell into place. And within a week, I had a house purchased here in town, And as you know, that's not always easy to do. So
No.
the fact that everything fell into place so quickly really just gave me the confidence that it was meant to be.
You mentioned bringing mom along, and this show's Try Knoxville because I want people to give Knoxville a shot, try it out.
Yeah.
What did mom think? You were busy doing the interview process. She probably roamed around town, I'm guessing.
She did.
Yeah.
And I think she was really excited just because it reminded her a lot of Nevada too. And she knew in my heart that's, again, I had a great childhood. And one of the things that might surprise you, we had a large extended family. So when I was in college, my maiden name is Heinz.
Okay.
We had a Heinz family reunion. And at our Heinz family reunion, we had 473 people there, and the majority were local to the county.
Okay.
So I grew up around family.
Right,
You know,
right.
everybody. And yeah, you didn't do anything without mom and dad knowing before you got home. That was before cell phones, so we couldn't notify them if we had gotten
Yeah.
in trouble, you know?
You still wonder to this day how they knew about it before you got home, but
Oh,
without
I
cell
knew.
phones. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yes. And so having that extended family and growing up in that kind of a village, if you will, is something that I really valued. And that was the feeling that she got here, too. She said every person that she met was so friendly and would, you know, she went up to the coffee shop and, oh, well, my sister's down here. Let me take you, or let me
Sure.
give you directions here or there. And so on our way home, she was not surprised at all by my comment because she was pretty tuned into the same thing.
Right. You made the transition. You came down here. You mentioned you had kids. That's a
did.
transition by itself, too, to
Yeah.
move them from another community. I've never been outside. I shouldn't say that. I actually started kindergarten and first grade in Melcher, but I haven't been outside of Marion County. We moved up the road a half mile, put me into Knoxville. I graduated here. I haven't had to do that transition and leave friends other than that one time. How tough was it for the kids to transition to Knoxville? I mean, they fit right in for one thing.
They do.
Yeah.
And very resilient, you know. So Ethan actually started his education at AGWSR. So he went to kindergarten and preschool at AGWSR, and then we moved to Grundy Center when he was in first grade. So he had already had one time
Right.
of transitioning. Caleb was 3 when we went to Grundy Center. And so when the boys and I came down here, Caleb was in 4th grade, and at the time, it was Mrs. Davis, now Mrs. Spriggs, and she was just a godsend for Caleb. He kind of has just beats to his own drum, and he and Katie just hit it off, and she got him into her guitar group. He's very musical, and he really flourished when we got down here, too. Ethan was a 7th grader and had a great group of friends up in Grundy Center. And so
That's a tough time to transition.
It was. And
Yeah.
I was probably most nervous about him. And I think the first day that he got here, he met Cade McDonald. And he and Cade became fast friends. And then Trent Walraven and Gable Garcia. And he found his group here almost instantaneously, too.
Right.
And I think that, again, was just such a blessing because it just made life so easy. And the education that they got here is so much better than it would have been in a smaller district just because of all their different interest areas. And when they got here, they were not straight A students by any means. And, you know, Ethan just graduated in May, ended up with a 4-point, got a perfect on his ACT. And I attribute that to his teachers in Knoxville, Iowa. His
I remember covering the
instructors.
story on that ACT. I mean, that was big. That's huge.
It is huge.
Yeah.
And yeah, I didn't think when he came in 7th grade, his writing ability, being an old language arts teacher, I
Yeah.
wasn't sure he was going to pass. And so they, you know, yeah, everybody just kind of reached out and they got involved in activities. And there were so many different activities for him to choose from. They didn't have to do all of the typical sports, you know, so cross country and golf. And one of the things that all of our kids, you know, are very interested in many things. And they, of course, want to take some of those college classes in high school. And our rule was you can't waive out of PE to get an extra class unless you are in an extracurricular sport, so you're getting your exercise somewhere else. And that's why Ethan chose cross country. He had never been a runner and never thought he would be a runner.
Yeah.
But if it meant he could take calculus instead of PE during the school day,
Mm-hmm.
he was willing to go out for cross country. And I think that actually is what sparked Nora's interest in cross country.
Mm-hmm.
She got to go to a lot of his meets and saw just the wonderful dynamic between the kids on the cross country team, and now she's been at the state cross country meet twice, and
Yeah.
so it's been exciting just to have all of our kids have been able to kind of find their own way and find things that they like to do. And as parents, our youngest right now are sophomores in high school, and
Mm-hmm.
we don't see them very often. Now
Right,
they've got
right.
their own vehicles, and they're involved in so many things that we make sure that the cars are in the garage at the end of the night and before we lock the doors up. And that's about as much as we get to see them unless we're actually at their activities and watching them participate.
That's one thing you do a lot too, is you travel around. And I see you supporting your kids, which I mean, any good parent does that. But you put yourself out there again. Granted, they go through social media and they complain about things, but when you're sitting in a grandstand, you could be a target, but you're not. I mean, everybody just kind of chills out.
So, Mike, here's something that you might find interesting, and you'll have to check this out. But one of the things that my mentors, before I became a superintendent, my mentors all told me that this is what happens, and I didn't believe them at first, and it's a fact. When I sit in the stands, unless I have a family member beside me,
Nobody sits with you.
nobody will sit around me. It's kind of like
I gave credit they were leaving you alone so you could enjoy the game, but they're just
and I don't know if I'm that intimidating. I'm 5'0". I usually have a smile on my face, so I don't think that that I should be intimidating.
Sure.
But it always just kind of floored me because I figured what a great opportunity for people to bend my ear or to give me some suggestions or just to visit, because I'm also social and I like to visit with people. And we have so many great families here in town, and our kids have great friends and, that have parents. And so if I don't get there first, I'll go sit beside somebody else, and then they're kind of stuck with me for a little
here
while.
it is. Be uncomfortable for a little bit. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Eventually, though, I usually end up somewhere else. But yeah, it's fun. We have extended family here too, and so it's always nice. There's usually either Ned and Jan or
I'm gonna say,
siblings, and
you're in the Pearson clan now. You
nieces
got
and
more family you can
nephews.
handle, probably.
I
so.
love it. Again, it's the same thing that I had growing up, and that's the life that I want.
That Ned's something else, isn't he?
Yes.
We have the greatest conversations. I mean, it's unreal. And if somebody would walk in on us having a conversation, they think we were fighting sometimes. And it's not a screaming thing. It's just little jabs at each other, So that's just his personality and my personality.
And it works well. And the Pearsons all just the most friendly and welcoming bunch. When I came into their family, and it's actually our anniversary is going to be 5 years this year.
Wow.
So
Congratulations.
thank you.
Yeah.
It again, just everything fell into place and was pretty natural. And when you have a blended family, you never know what to expect.
Right.
And Troy and I both agreed that from the beginning we were going to be intentional. And so our kids are our kids.
Yep.
Our parents are our parents. Our sisters and brothers are our sisters and brothers, and we don't attach any other title to it.
Mm-hmm.
The 4 that were living in our house with us are our kids, and they're treated just like each other. Now, it was interesting. We have 2 adult children as well that didn't live in our house when we were a blended family. And we also believe, even with our kids as they grow up and move out of our house, because now we've had 2 of those as well, that with adult children, we like the phrase invitation but not obligation.
Okay.
You will always be invited, to be part of what we're doing. But as you get married and have kids of your own, you want to have new traditions and other things that you're going to be spending your time. And so we never want our kids to feel obligated that they have to join in on those things, because they're at another level of their lives as well. And it's been fun to watch, them with their kids and now our grandkids, and love every single one of them. We're very blessed. They're all here in town. Sometimes we have more interactions with them, and other times when they're really busy or other things are going on, and some, then it's not quite as much as what we might want.
Sure.
As grandparents, you always want to see your grandkids all the time.
Oh, yeah. Isn't it funny how that worked out?
Oh,
Growing up, you're like, the old saying, if I knew grandkids would be this much fun, I would have had them first, and it's like, what's that mean? But now I get it.
Yes.
Yeah, I get it.
And we had to go through the parenting stuff
Oh,
though,
yeah.
and it's fun because right now having teenagers in the house, that we're still raising,
Mm-hmm.
and then grandkids, you look at life differently. With our kids, it's really about trying to impact their thinking a little bit and give them their wiggle room. I truly believe that once kids get to be 10, 12, 14 years old, they have to have those experiences on their own. They can't learn from our mistakes. They really have to be trusted to
Mm-hmm.
try some things. And if it doesn't work out, we still have the safety net underneath them. So we can pick them up and dust them off and talk them through maybe what would have been better.
Sure.
But those life learning experiences are so valuable if they can truly have those and we don't overprotect our kids. At the same time, there's a lot of weird things out in the world. So how
Yeah.
do we keep some safety measures in place while we still let them figure some things out? And that's one of the joys to me of parenting. And when you get to grandparenting, though, you can just have fun.
Yeah. It's have fun, then send it back.
Yes.
So
yes.
I get that. We have so much more to talk about. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I told you I'd have you out here by a certain time. We're going to do that. But there's a lot of big things getting ready to happen in Knoxville. The middle school is getting ready to start up the new project with that. They're taking bids here shortly, I think, if they haven't started already. We'll talk more about that next time around, okay?
Perfect.
All right.
would
But
love that.
I do have one thing I got to ask you, though,
Yeah.
okay? And as a first-time guest, I ask this of all my guests. I know why you came to Knoxville, but what's your sales pitch to convince someone else to try Knoxville?
Ooh. My sales pitch would be Knoxville is the place that will feel like home. Our people here are welcoming. They want people here and they want to embrace and care about each other and make good things happen. And we're really about people. So if you are searching for a place, if you feel like you don't have a home, if you came to Knoxville, I bet you would feel like you have a home because that's just who we are. And it doesn't matter what you like to do. There is somebody here who will like to do the same things. And I think just the variety of opportunities is great. And we take care of each other and we are growing and thriving. And I think people have kind of come back to a very optimistic point of view. There are good things happening. We're not perfect. And there
Sure.
are still things that, people probably wish were a little bit different. But man, this is a pretty good place to live. And whether you're living here or visiting here, I just encourage people to try Knoxville.
I don't know why you were nervous coming in. That almost felt like scripted, and it wasn't. So
wasn't.
great job.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
so
having
much.
me.
Again, Knoxville Superintendent Cassi Pearson, and we'll have her back again. We'll start talking about what's going on here in town as far as the new projects and upcoming projects as well. We want to remind everybody to tune in next week. Also, Mayor Brian Hatch will be on the skillet for the second time. When I say on the skillet, we ask a little more tougher questions, not impossible questions, but we'll talk about the VA because that's a big thing and a big subject for the city right now. And Brian's going to fill us in on the latest on that next week. Until next time, thanks for tuning in. We'll see everybody later.